Imagine this. You're kneeling on the cold floor of someone's dusty old basement, tightening bolts, checking safety gear, and solving problems they didn't even know they had. You're giving your time you barely have, offering your skills, your tools, your expertise, all for someone who once called you a friend. You don't send them a massive invoice. You don't even charge them for the hours you spent planning, checking, and testing beforehand. You just ask to be paid for a single day, a single install, a single job done right. You figure, that's fair, that's respectful. But instead of gratitude, you get silence. And when you ask about payment, what do you get? Not a thank you, not a check, just a guilt trip and a last-minute demand to reschedule. Like your time means nothing. You pause and wonder, did I do something wrong? Was I too professional with someone who used to be a friend? Or did I finally draw a boundary that should have been drawn a long time ago? Let me take you into the story of how one simple act of kindness turned into a hard-earned lesson about boundaries, friendship, and the price of being too generous. It started with a message from someone I hadn't heard from in years. We used to be coworkers, not close friends, really. More like friendly colleagues. You know the kind. Quick hallway chats, maybe lunch together every now and then. But outside of work, the only time we ever saw each other was when I made the effort. Once, years ago, I drove an hour and a half to visit her when she was on maternity leave. That was it. No birthday messages, no catch-up calls, not even a text. But now, nearly a decade later, she reached out because she needed help with a job at her house. She knew I ran a small side business, something I balanced with my full-time job. And I guess she figured I'd be the perfect person to call, skilled, trustworthy, and maybe, just maybe, willing to cut her a deal. And she was right, at least about the last part, because despite the years of silence, I agreed to help. When I arrived, I quickly noticed some safety issues based on how old the house was, so I flagged them, and we agreed to run precautionary tests. I even arranged for the testing, had her pay the lab directly, and didn't charge her for the time I spent coordinating it. No markup, no extra fees, no invoice for my time spent on site visits or planning. Just honest professional help. All I sent her was one simple invoice for the actual installation day, which included the gear, at cost, no profit, and a full day of labor plus travel. That was it. But apparently, even that was too much. During testing, I mentioned one small detail, a slight click sound coming from a part of the system. It was minor, comparable to the sound of a light switch. Just something I noticed and flagged out of caution. About a week later, she texted me, saying she wasn't happy with it. No big deal, I thought. I gave her a call, calmly discussed the options, and we agreed that I'd come back Thursday night to take a look. I even adjusted my schedule for it, knowing I'd be out of town that weekend. I figured we were all set. Then, silence. Thursday came and went. The invoice deadline passed. Still no payment. When I finally followed up, not to pressure her, but because I needed to pay my own supplier, she replied that she didn't feel obligated to pay because she wasn't happy with the result. And then she dropped the kicker. She wouldn't be available Thursday night as we agreed. Instead, I'd need to come Saturday morning. Her words, not a request, but a statement. She changed the plan. She withheld payment. And suddenly, I wasn't a professional anymore. I was a favor she could control. I was stunned. I'd already done more than I needed to. I'd given her my time, my expertise, my supplies. And now, she wanted to move the goalposts after the job was done. So I stopped, took a breath, and decided to do something I don't often do. I stood up for myself. I sent her an email, a calm, detailed email. I outlined every step I had taken for her, every hour I hadn't charged, every penny I had saved her. It turned out I had done nearly 4 times the work I had actually invoiced. I wasn't being petty. I wasn't being rude. I just wanted her to see the full picture. And then I told her this: no further work would be done until the invoice was paid. And from now on, any future work would be billed appropriately. I closed by saying I hoped it was all a misunderstanding, that maybe we'd just gotten our wires crossed, that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't personal. Her response? There's no misunderstanding. She said she'd learned her lesson about trusting friends and that they'd find someone else to finish the job. But here's the twist. She paid the invoice, and that was the end of it. I sent her one final message, thanked her, and left some technical safety notes for whoever she hired next. And that was that. But it didn't sit right. Not because I wanted more money, not because I wanted more work, but because I kept asking myself, was I wrong to expect to be paid? Would a better friend have done more for free? Would a more flexible friend have just accepted the schedule change and gone on Saturday anyway? Was I being too rigid, too professional, too cold? The truth is, I don't think so. Because at the end of the day, what I really wanted wasn't money, it was respect. And in this situation, I realized something important. She never saw me as a friend. Not really. Because if she did, she wouldn't have treated me like a service she could manipulate. She reached out when she needed something, not when she wanted to reconnect. And I don't blame her for that. But I do blame her for assuming that her discomfort gave her the right to withhold payment, for deciding her schedule mattered more than mine, for forgetting that professionals deserve to be treated like professionals, even if they once worked with you, even if they once made the effort to keep in touch, even if they gave you a discount, especially then. So if you're listening to this and you've ever been in my shoes, giving more than you get, letting guilt keep you from charging what you're worth, bending over backwards to make other people comfortable, let this be your reminder. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to say, this is what I charge. You are allowed to say, that time doesn't work for me. You are allowed to say, I've already done more than enough. Because here's the hard truth. The people who truly respect you, they won't expect you to work for free. They won't treat your kindness like a coupon code. They won't ghost you for years and then demand you drop everything for them. They'll say thank you. They'll pay you fairly. And they'll honor your time, your skill, and your boundaries. And if they don't, let them find someone else, just like she did. Because you don't owe anyone your peace. Especially not someone who only sees your value when they need something. So now I ask you, after everything you've heard, am I the asshole for charging a fair rate, sticking to my word, and walking away from someone who clearly didn't value me? Or was I just someone who finally learned that boundaries don't make you selfish? They make you free. Thanks for listening to AITA Stories, where real people share raw, honest, and sometimes painful moments that make us all think a little deeper. If you've ever been in a situation like this, drop a comment below. And remember, sometimes the biggest lesson is knowing when enough really means enough. Subscribe for more.